agenda. So I'm going to kick off by that, and particularly as we've got one or two new members here. Now, the West Midlands Combined Authority picked 2041 date as its date for carbon neutrality based on science, and what we've established through the work and evidence is that this date will be very, very tough. I mean, we can pluck dates out of the air, but the fact is the actions needed to achieve those dates are very difficult, because it involves action from the whole of our society, business, people and individual. Now, the team, CA team's done a lot of great work actually looking at what needs to be done. The issue now is that we are, what you can say, at the action stage. And I think, as no thinking about it, I know we need to be mindful of a number of simple principles based on my experience of business, which is very extensive over many years, as to how we go about some of this. And let me just start listing some of them, because they're relevant to some of the papers here today. First of all, the law of diminishing returns applies, and we need delivery at scale. We cannot just keep saying, government, give us money, without clarity of the basic principles that we are trying to go for, and what the effect and delivery and outcomes from those will be. Now, many of the stakeholders out there, whether it's local authorities or companies or people actually, already taking action, and we must be mindful of not teaching grandmothers to suck eggs. You know, for instance, my own council, you can look at street lights. Well, we've done that. You know, street lights, and we're on the way as an organisation of achieving 2030 as carbon neutrality. I'm pretty confident that we're going to do that as an organisation. The 2041 date is something else, of course. So a lot of the low-hanging fruit has already been plucked, and it's some of the difficult stuff that we've now got to tackle. Now, the working cost of management and mobilisation will be significant, and this is where it's the issue of the law of diminishing returns. We have to factor that into our assessment of the projects we tackle. We must focus our efforts on what will deliver results or help others deliver those results. Our work needs to be guided on experience and practical knowledge of the issues, the business and sectors covered. And this is, not necessarily just the science or the product, but actually some fundamental business of management principles, as opposed to theory. We must be firmly grounded in the real world, the art of the possible. We must be firmly grounded in the real world and the art of the possible. Funds are limited, and neither government nor leaders are going to keep spending money without seeing exactly what the product of that is. So we must focus our efforts on what will deliver results, what the measurement will be, and who needs to take that action. I mean, often we call ourselves an enabler, but I'm not 100% sure I know what that means. Bearing in mind, local authorities already have, they're all doing something to greater degrees, and quite honestly, we want that to continue, and our role is to add value to that. So we need that clarity on what our role is and what we are really delivering to the party, not in our opinion, but in theirs. What value are we actually adding to the delivery party? So there's some key principles there about how we go about this we need to reflect on in stuff that we approve in the CA. And that's what I'm going to be looking at very hard, because there have been issues raised about one or two of the papers that have come forward. And, I am very mindful of comments made, and I want to make sure that we deliver towards this environmental objectives, not just do what most people have done on the environmental agenda, which it's sound bites, it's headlines, it's the rest. It's actually not the results out there that are going to be achieved. Now, just moving on to another thing is the combined authority is trying to reduce the some of the workload, the number of committees and bureaucracy it has, and we must make sure we do not increase it without a justifiable reason. I mean, one of the comments I've had from leaders is that if we're not careful, we're just creating unnecessary works and job. I am looking for added value, not bureaucracy. Now, I applaud the ambition and vision expressed in some of the work that's going through, but we must address the art of the possible and not develop programs we cannot cope with, whatever the funding is offered. Excuse me. And then another point is the paperwork. If you cannot sum up your proposal in a couple of pages, then I think you need to try again. We're all very busy people. I'm just not prepared, as I have had to in some occasions, even this week, to spend midnight hours trying to find the point in a long paper. I want to see what the point is, and if someone can't explain it to me, don't come to me, okay? And reducing the font is not a cop-out. So those are some fairly basic comments that I'm applying now. I see you. I think are you making? You seem to be making quite heavy notes there. Dan. So I'm hoping you've got them. I read from a script. So if you want that script, fine. But I'm going to refer him back that, and I'm going to stick to that. And I don't want anybody going away from those principles. Okay. 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 I mean, if anybody disagrees with anything I've said, then I hope they don't. But we start off from that point, right? Okay. With that, we're now going to get into the substantive agenda, which is the Transport Green Paper, and I'm going to hand over to David Harris. I don't know how much time you think you've got, but can you take 10 minutes off, please? Because the paper at the end, which is the forward plan, I want to actually comment on that. Sorry to be like that, but you must assume that by and large we've read the papers. So, it's comment and feedback that I'm looking for.
Councillor Courts, David is now Alex. So Alex is going to take us through this item.
David, now Alex. Well, my apologies, I hadn't picked that up, but well done, Alex.
It's been quite the transformation. Thank you, Chair. So just to clarify, I'm Alex Greathold. I work for David. I'm a Principal Policy and Strategy Officer working at TFWM on the LTP refresh. So take on board your comments, Chair, about keeping this brief. The purpose of the report as set out really is to just draw attention to the publication of the Green Paper that has gone out in July. On what the future of transport might look like, and that Green Paper is aiming to open up public debate and conversation about how we address some of the issues we've got with transport and the scope of options that people are happy to consider going forward. It's also to just draw attention to planned transport summit of leaders towards the end of this month, where we will be looking at some of the engagement feedback that we've got from the Green Paper, as well as some additional technical work to get direction from leaders about where they would like to see this head, and also to just give a short update in terms of where we're going with the overall programme for developing the LTP. Just to remind people, one of the combined authorities' core duties is producing the local transport plan. It's a really important document for the region, covering the 7 metropolitan districts, that presents us the opportunity to set out how we want to address those transport challenges. But it's not, whilst it's the combined authorities' duty, it's obviously one that we're working with the local authorities on to develop the LTP, because it's absolutely needs to be there seen as our partners' plans as well. There's been a lot of policy context change, climate emergency being one of them since the last LTP was developed, and as can be seen in the Green Paper and the report, that's having a massive impact on the kind of scope of options we might want to consider for going forward. And as your comments at the beginning, Chair, reflected, the pace of change is high. The need to think about what we can do to achieve that is high as well. I think the challenge, probably, so to cut to it, the green paper, a lot of the concepts in it in terms of the motives for change, which are all about why we might want to change our approach. It's beyond the climate emergency. They're all things that we're familiar with, that we've talked about before in terms of equity, of social, economic and environmental objectives. But it's just to draw attention to the fact that whilst none of these objectives we're necessarily saying are more valuable than the others, they're frankly not directly comparable. The climate emergency is playing a unique part in how the LTP is being developed, because it's the only objective which has it has a unique sense of urgency and definitiveness around what's required to meet that objective, the pace of change. Electrification absolutely is key within that, but government and the combined authority agree, as do others, that electrification won't get us all the way. And I think we've talked before about this, around the need for thinking about the role of behaviour change in moving things forward as well. The green paper is quite honest about whilst what we're doing right now is good and great in terms of our investments in transport, it's not going to close that gap for us, and we've got to think beyond what we're doing right now to more effectively change behaviours if that's what we want for the future of the West Midlands. And that's as much about, yes, it's about investing in the alternatives, but it's also about having difficult conversations about some of the restraints on behaviours that are standing in the way of decarbonisation. Engagement's absolutely key. A lot of that evidence is long-standing. This is really about how do we work with the public to understand what's acceptable, what delivers what they need in a way that they can accept. So we've been engaging on the green paper across a broad range of platforms. I will briefly touch on some success in terms of Transport for West Midlands market research online community, which is kind of an online forum of citizens from across the whole of the West Midlands. And actually we've been able to do some really dig into some of the issues at a deeper level than we would have been able to through traditional means, and it's been really invaluable in terms of understanding, yes, obviously our citizens want a better West Midlands, but they face challenges in terms of the importance of their mobility, and we're able to talk about that and how we can provide that in the future in perhaps different ways in which we can meet our objectives as well. But even on our more conventional engagement, the consultation that's open at the moment, we've had over 600 public responses, which is more than we've ever had for any previous LTP. So it's been seen as the public has got a high level of interest in the issues that are explored. Climate emergency being one of the those key ones. So I won't go on much further in terms of just setting out some brief timescales. I mentioned that there is that summit that's coming at the end of the month. We're at a high level as well. Before COP26, we want to be in a position where we can release a prospectus or a policy statement around the LTP and what we know the challenges in terms of climate emergency and the kind of options we're going to need to think about going forward and principles for doing that. We want to release that in time, obviously, for COP26. Carrying on beyond that, getting towards a draft LTP by the end of the year for consultation early next year and adoption after that. So I'll leave things there in terms of the overview.
You're on mute, Chair.
So I am. Right. One comment from me, first of all, is that, there's quite a, an issue of tackling various, points in this, but I don't know whether we have looked at this whole plan from a point of view of routes and what it now means, what transport now needs. I get the sense that this is very much based on an urban society, for example. I made the point the other day that, we can keep saying get people on their bikes and the rest of it. It's just not going to happen in rural areas, nor is there going to be public transport necessarily easy in rural areas. and it's not even just rural areas. There is a tendency for a lot of transport routes to go into Birmingham centre, and in if we are to achieve a better transport modelling, it's unacceptable that it takes an hour to get from one part of Solihull to another, for example. Obviously, you know, there's a limit to how far you're going to fix that, but it needs to be understood and recognised, and I strongly suspect it applies in other places, but probably Birmingham, because, I mean, if you think about West Midlands transport, going through Solihull, you've got the A45 and the A34, which both feed Birmingham. So, you know, we've got road projects on the A45, which are nothing to do with Solihull. They're actually getting the traffic moving further on. So, you know, all I'm saying is we need to start, and particularly with home working now, you know, hopefully the importance of local places will be more important. If we're to embrace climate change, it can't just be from get people out of its cars. We've got to actually give people a viable alternative of transport. That's my point. Now, invite any other comments.
If I may, Chair, as Councillor Fowler, I would certainly endorse the comments you have just made there, which I have made pretty similar comments in the Chamber in the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Wasim?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, I think one of the things that's really important for Birmingham, and I think could be potentially a game changer, is the return of the cross-city bus routes in our city that connect key employment hubs, key visitor attractions, and key communities, not just in the city centre, but from one side of the city to the other too. So I know the first one we're looking at connecting from, I think it's Moseley, all the way up to Smethwick, and connecting a number of hospital sites to that too. So and obviously the first sprint route from Walsall to Solihull will be really, really important too. So I think creating viable alternatives to what we've got currently will be really, really important. It's not just about connecting people into the city centre, it's about connecting people to places that they do visit and key employment hubs right across the city.
Well, that more succinctly put what I said, I think, in many ways. Thank you, Wasim. Brilliant. Any other, what else have we got? Anyone else want to speak? It's a really good piece of work, I think. We're really getting somewhere with new thinking on transport now. And you couple that with the other side of things, which is, you know, the types of buses. I mean, the push to obviously electric buses and hopefully hydrogen and things like that will add to, you know, the issues of pollution and so on, which of course we deal with later. Okay, any more speakers? Or if not, I think I'm inclined to move on. Alex, great stuff. You've heard what we've had to say. Thank you very much. And this agenda goes on, doesn't it? This subject goes on. Okay, I'll move on. By the way, I missed the approval minutes of the last meeting. I'm not sure that's a big game changer, but I take it nobody's got any objections to those. So I'll just, for the record, deal with that. Okay, I'm going to move to air quality options. Now I'm going to hand over safely to Jackie. In the expectation she'll hand over to Professor Bill Bloss, but I'm not.
Yes, that's right. That is right. Thank you, Councillor Courts. So in a minute, I will hand over to Bill Bloss from the University of Birmingham. But just to give some context, because this is a verbal item, what we have offered to do is to pull together an options paper around air quality in terms of the role that the combined authority might have in terms of addressing air quality, and this is particularly due to the expected or anticipated Environment Bill, which is due to receive royal assent this autumn. It's been delayed over and over, but we are hoping it's going to happen now. And in that, a requirement around particulates, which could have more of a regional, I suppose more, could be tackled effectively at a regional perspective, and also the impacts are felt further from the source of the emissions, and Bill will talk through this because he's far more erudite in this space than I am. But just to give it the context about the options paper and introduce Bill from the WMAir project, who we're working with to help develop the possible options. So I'll hand over to you, Bill. I know you've got a few slides to run us through.
Great, thank you very much, Jackie. Thank you for the introduction. Hello, Councillor Courts and committee members. Thank you for your time. So I'm Bill Bloss from the University of Birmingham. I'm joined by my colleague Joe Acton, and what we have is a few slides to run you through to give you a little bit of the context to thinking about this options paper. So bearing in mind the opening remarks, I will try and be brief, but if I manage to share my screen, I will zip through these. So if Jackie nods, I'll know that you can see these slides.
Yeah,
Great.
I can
Thanks,
see them.
Okay, so that's who we are. The overall background to thinking about air quality is as it forms the largest environmental risk to health in the UK. At the moment, we have air quality objectives which are set nationally. It's a devolved issue, so at England's level. Some regional authorities set their own ambitions above and beyond those, and then local authorities are currently responsible for compliance through local air quality management. And technically, under the second devolution deal, the combined authority has the opportunity to join with them there. So that's the kind of context. The project here is working with Jackie and her team to explore the scope for combined authority actions to support local authorities and ultimately deliver improved air quality. And the WMAir project at the university is helping prepare an options paper for Environment Board for due course. So WMAir is a NERC, Natural Environment Research Council funded project at the university, which runs for 5 years. And the idea is to allow us to draw on the research expertise in a way that influences and helps support policy in support of improved air quality and health. So it's a chunk of resource, if you like, to draw down the research expertise and apply it to policy measures, whether that's around observations of air quality, activities around emissions, modelling air quality levels, and understanding benefits for health and the economy that we can unlock through cleaner air. So that's our project. Most of this thinking is going to be around two key challenges for clean air. The first is nitrogen dioxide gas, NO2, and the sources of NO2 in the region are shown in the pie chart at the bottom. So the point is the big green chunk is from road transport, and NO2 emissions are dominated by vehicles and road transport. The other key pollutant we're thinking about is fine particles in the air, PM2.5, that are small enough to inhale into our lungs. And the pie chart below the picture of particles has got many more colours in it, and that tells us it comes from a wider range of sources. And in particular, we need to think about combustion for heat and power in that space. Where are we at the moment? These are two modelled maps of NO2 and PM2.5 across the region. You can see that the NO2 one looks very much like a map of the strategic road network, reflecting the source is mostly traffic. And the PM one is a bit more blurred out, reflecting that it lasts longer in the air and more readily spreads from local authority to local authority, and indeed into and out of the region. Details on these don't matter, but it might be useful just to remember that the NO2 levels are reaching peaks of a little over 40 on that map, and many of the PM levels are around or a little over the 10 to 12 area on the right-hand side page. So those two numbers, 40-ish and 10 to 12, are relevant versus the air quality targets at the moment. So the current UK national air quality objectives are 40 micrograms per cubic metre for NO2 and 25 for PM2.5. And there are limits for other species such as ozone on there, but I won't focus on those for now in the interests of time. So some of our air quality is in breach of the NO2 limit, and that's driven a lot of the current local authority actions that are already underway. Our air quality for PM complies with the UK legal limit at the moment, but the second line on the table here shows you the World Health Organization guidelines, and that number 10 is rather lower and would put a significant part of the region having challenges for the levels of PM2.5, that number of 12-ish we looked at a second ago. So just focusing in on that. The WHO guidelines aren't legally binding, but they are influential in policy. They're due to be updated, and that update will come, I think, 2 weeks today on the 22nd of September. And the government has set an ambition in the clean air strategy of halving the number of people living in locations above that WHO level of 10 by 2025. In the combined authority area, about 41% of the population live in areas where PM levels are above 10 micrograms. And then the Environment Bill, which is currently in the Lords at the committee stage, will update the targets, and it remains to be seen what the new England targets end up being. But clearly the existing WHO level is in the frame there, let alone any updates to that. Currently going on, lots of extensive air quality actions led by all the local authorities across the region. With support, I think I'll call it, from DEFRA, or the Joint Air Quality Unit in Whitehall, and from Transport for West Midlands regionally and the Combined Authority. A lot of that has necessarily been driven by compliance with the concentration limit, the NO2 issue that I touched on. And so it's tended to focus on road transport. And you can see some of the examples that are underway in different areas on the screen there. And in parallel, Transport for West Midlands have an extensive range of activities that are underway again to reduce emissions of NO2 and PM. So there's a lot currently happening, is the key point. Much of what we've done is focused on NO2 and the transport sector. Over time, that challenge will get better, especially as we electrify aspects of the vehicle fleet. What we haven't done so much of is targeting particulates, and that will be the challenge in the future. And you can see the stat on the screen that something like 70 wards across the region would exceed the WHO guideline for PM2.5. We expect the Environment Bill targets to focus on PM, and we know we'll need to think about both locally emitted and imported particulate matter and transport of pollutants between local authorities and between regions. And the Environment Bill is going to shift the political landscape a little bit. It brings in some changes to the original Environment Act that set out the local air quality management framework. And in particular, it will require neighbouring local authorities to participate in air quality strategies to address a challenge in a particular area. It will bring in a duty or an obligation for support and consultation between local and combined authority levels. And it introduced something called air quality partners, and that's the ability to co-opt other publicly funded bodies in supporting air quality actions when they have a responsibility for part of the problem. So there's going to be quite a significant shift in the policy landscape, which will play into ways in which potentially the combined authority can support the local authority actions. So the proposal is to put together an options paper to essentially set out what I've just run through in rather more detail: the context, the Environment Bill potential changes to the legislative framework, the current situation, links to net zero and our carbon policy. I'll touch on that in just a sec. And then what can be done, options to reduce emissions and clean air. and options for delivery. So who should be responsible, who has authority. And then ultimately it will be a matter for the combined authority to consider what it thinks is most sensible in terms of its role and the case for a dedicated air quality strategy following on from that options paper. So, final thing just to throw out there, we ought to attempt to put some degree of quantification on the things that are happening already to support their prioritisation. How much benefit will we get? How much bang for our buck? We're doing a lot in the net zero strategy that will help air quality, and we ought to capture that and quantify those win-wins. And all of those are mentioned in the paper Alex introduced a moment ago. We should be mindful that different communities are impacted to different degrees, and unsurprisingly there are correlations between poor air quality and other indicators of deprivation. And we could elect to use that as one measure for prioritisation, and in this way we get a levelling up lever for environmental inequalities across the region. And I think it's really critical that we think about ways in which we can support other organisations, the private sector, in bringing air quality into play alongside their carbon ambitions. And as I said, there's a whole lot of win-win benefits there that we can capture, especially around things like decarbonisation of homes. And finally, we need to think about how we measure it and how we can evidence quality and progress towards cleaner air. So that's where I'll stop. Happy to take comments or thoughts. I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very interesting and actually seems to affect us all. I was particularly interested in the slide that said that 72 of 192 wards within the WMCA exceed guidelines for PM. Now, I mean, obviously I know more about Solihull than anything else, but the problems we have are on the A45 and the A34. In other words, they're on the roads going through, and that's that obviously affects adjacent communities. So I'm just intrigued as to how, you know, it's another one of these things. We can do lots of stuff, but what's going to make the big difference? I strongly suspect the discussion we had earlier on, that's why I raised the question of routes on transport, is going to be vital, because at the moment, you know, I'd be interested to hear from Birmingham, but Birmingham has, you know, it has a clean air zone, but it's much less car based in some ways than say we are. It'll be much more difficult to do anything like that in Solihull because you've got two roads going through it, and also that there just isn't the public transport to make good of that. So, you know, it's this interlocking of areas that I'm particularly intrigued in knowing. That's my. I mean, you don't need to come back on that if you want to take other. I've got at the moment. Oliver wants to comment.
Hi, could you just put the presentation back with the map that you showed at the start, which shows the different levels? I just wanted to comment on a couple of things on there with regard to Walsall.
This one here.
Yeah, the PM particularly. Just picking on some comments that Ian said. If you look to the east of the borough, we've got a sort of yellow patch there. That's actually the brickworks in right. Aldridge. Yep. We've got a house building boom. The economy is short of materials. I'm intrigued to know, with the brickworks being expanded, what measures we can actually do with that area other than crippling the economy and jobs. On Easter Borough, we've obviously got Junction 10, which is being remodeled at the moment. So that's going to be a big thing if the traffic flows better through there, because we're not going to have the vehicles stopping. So that's a benefit from the particulates. But one of the things that my pollution guys always tell me is that we take a lot of Wolverhampton's pollution because the prevailing wind blows westerly. So in a sense, it looks bad because we've got the M6 going through there, but we actually pick up other people's stuff as well. And I know speed limits have obviously been put on the M5 and M6 as permanent measures, or semi-permanent at 60s, haven't they, through Oldbury and the like, to try and reduce the emissions. So So that's the kind of position we come in from Warsaw, that we've got, a major motorway network, the junction and industry. All of those are obviously problematic. Electricity with cars is going to be a benefit, but as they say, the brakes and the tires still give off particulates when you stop. Battery powered cars are heavier as well, so there's potentially more wear in those areas, and 50% I'm told of particulates come from those as opposed to out of the exhaust pipe or other parts. So that's really where we're coming on from that. Obviously I've said quite a bit there, so I shall stop now and hand back to anyone else who wanted to say anything. Thank you.
I'm inclined to bring in Wasim now, but what I'm intrigued by about the brickworks being, I suppose in an ideal world, you don't want to brickworks in the middle of an urban area, do you? You need to put them somewhere not near an urban area, and then of course use diesel lorries to bring the bricks in.
They sit on the clay in, though. That's where they extract it from.
That's right. Same as Whittlesea and other places that we. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's an easy answer to that, Wasim, but we'll hear
the PCNs, the fines that have been issued. But the real story is that the level of compliance. So the level of people, the number of people who are actually driving compliant vehicles and not impacted by the clean air zone has been incredibly high, far better than we expected. In terms of air quality, we've also seen an improvement in that. It is very early days, but thus far it's been a success. I think, Chair, if you'd agree, at the next meeting we can get the council officers who support me on the clean air zone to come and deliver a presentation to this board on how it's working, what's been a success, what some of the challenges have been too. And I think it's important to share with colleagues. I know Birmingham's clean air zone not just impacts on Birmingham's residents, but residents in Walsall, in Solihull, in Coventry, right across the region, and Sandwell. But Sandwell's border is, I think, 1.5 miles outside our clean air zone from Spring Hill. So I think we're really helpful to talk to other colleagues and share what we've achieved, share some of the challenges. There is a clear challenge. So the two early patterns that we've picked up, there's a challenge for Hackney carriage vehicles in Birmingham. Their compliance levels are nowhere near where they should be. So we're looking at how we can further support them. We've got a pot of money from government, and we're looking at how we can utilise that in a slightly different way to support them. And there's also a challenge for vans. Not at the level that is for Hackney carriage vehicles, but we're looking at bringing forward something that can support those, whether they're employed or self-employed people who have vans and drive through our have to drive through our city centre and our clean air zone area for their work purposes. So those are two very early patterns picked up. I've had a meeting earlier this week with the TUC around the creative sector, particularly the gig economy, and see how we can work with them too. So there's patterns we're picking up all along, but we're really keen to share that with colleagues from across the region, and I think this platform will be helpful to do that.
Well, certainly I would very much welcome that, and I'd very much welcome the contributions from yourself and your team as to how you think the CA can sort of add value to all this, because what is clear is this is going to need to be a collaborative thing. And I think my initial remarks talked about the art of the possible, about what can we do in the shorter term. I mean, I was in London the other day and really impressed by the electric taxis, and I thought we need electric taxis. And then I spoke to the driver about it. He said the problem is this is actually a dual for hybrid, and he said it really only does 60 miles. I mean, that's no good to man nor beast, and this is the real problem we have, and it affects other parts of the agenda here. That we can talk all we like about electric, about hydrogen, all these things, but the tech is not there. And I mean, actually, in some ways it's getting there, but whether it's fast charging or whether it's bigger batteries or a combination of them. So I mean, there's a lot. This is all difficult, but I think you're right. I think we should deal with this. We should actually pick this up again and talk. It'd be interesting for hear the Birmingham perspective on this. I don't have any other speakers here, and I've actually, Bill, I've sort of not allowed you to come in, but you already hear how appreciated your contribution. It was crisp, thank you. So would you like to come back on any of the points that have been made? We've got a task here.
And I think what we need to do is look for the synergies, the coordination wins or enabling wins, and capture the benefits of the things that are happening already, as well as thinking about the challenges. Yeah. I think I had that sort of positive approach to it.
Yeah, and it very much harks to my introductory remarks about what in our individual role is here, how we bring together partners, and actually what the art of the possible is, because the brickworks thing. I mean, there are there's clay all over the place, but where are we going to make the bricks? Well, the answer is we need to keep the local industries going, don't we? So, it's quite difficult to know what the answers here are, but I don't think we're going to be able to fix all these. We've just got to fix the best ones we can. So I would say, shall we leave it at there? I think we've whetted the appetite. It's been a great contribution so far, and I think we will come back to this. And I think we should take up Wasim's offer. I've got another hand. No, it's Jackie's.
Yeah, I just put in the chat, Councillor Courts, by the next Energy and Environment Board, we will also have the options paper available, so we can also talk through that as part of a broader air quality item, bringing in the experience from Birmingham as well, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, we'll run with it. Let's do that. Okay, thanks, Bill. Thanks, everyone. I think we'll move on now. We're doing better on time, but I wanted it to be that way. So the next topic is on the agenda is infrastructure for zero emissions vehicles strategy. Now, there is to be there's a lot of papers in here, but I expressed a view before the meeting. I'm not clear realistically what the proposition is here, and that's what I want to hear. I understand the consultation, I understand all that, but what I don't understand is really what the end product of this is, and indeed really what the strategy is, because there isn't, I'm not happy with having a 50-page document which doesn't, which did not accept that out. So if you could tell me what are we about? Is it about basically we're looking at sites where we can have hydrogen, electric, and whatever other fuels? Is that the objective, or is it something else? Who's leading? Cherry, you taking this up, please.
My colleague Kate, I'm hoping, is going to be able to join us. So she was going to take you through some slides, but we can, if you would prefer, we can answer your questions.
Or are they slides already sent?
Can you hear me okay? I'm having some trouble with Teams this morning. On my screen, I'm on camera, and I have my microphone on, but can you hear me okay?
I'm fine. Yeah, I can hear you. Well, I'll put my thumb up.
We can't see you, and we haven't got any slides up.
Okay. Let me see if I can put some slides up and then see.
Are these new slides?
They are a summary of the slides that were sent already.
Right, because I don't like new presentations that sprung on me. They should be sent in advance.
They're the slides that have been sent, but we've agreed we will just go through some of the key aspects for you, Councillor Court.
Yeah, but I'm not interested in the consultation. I want the question asked that I just asked, which is what are we trying to do in the end? Because what hasn't been produced isn't a strategy. It's 50 pages of slides.
If you'd like to skip to slide 20, Kate, that should answer the question. So as you're aware, Councillor Courts, the strategy hasn't been developed yet. We are in the midst of the consultation process. We have just closed the consultation, so we've gathered together an awful lot of information in order to complete that strategy. So apologies, the information you were all given was part of that consultation process. Everybody was given the opportunity to participate in a series of workshops, etc., over the summer. So we've gathered together an awful lot of information. The strategy that we proposed prior to going out to consultation sets out 3 key areas where we think we can add value and make a significant difference. Kate, are you happy if I talk through these and then we can answer any? Yeah, okay. So the first of these is that we've already heard that the WMCA obviously has core duties in transport and housing, and the one that's relevant here is transport. We don't have a core duty in the energy space. And it's really important that the energy planning process and the transport planning processes come together now. It's something that hasn't happened before. Up until now, transport can plan its development, and we can just ensure that the petrol and the diesel is provided to enable that those plans to work. But now we have to actually go through a planning process that takes place independently of the public sector. It's a regulated activity, very set timescales, etc. That Energy Capital works closely with the distribution network operators and Ofgem on that process. So the key thing we want to do is to bring those two planning processes together to ensure that we are making sure that the infrastructure investment in energy that's required to support any transport strategy objectives takes place. And it's really important that we do this early, not at the point at which we want to implement, because the energy infrastructure could be a barrier to us being able to deliver the outcomes we're seeking. So that's the first piece that's come very clearly as to why we need this strategy. It's something that we'll set out in the slides. The second element of the strategy that we want to pull together is, because the public sector is making a lot of investment into this, they're leading the way in many ways. The private sector is responding to the market opportunities that already exist. So where there is demand, the private sector is delivering. But we've already identified some significant market failures, as you've discussed already, Councillor Courts, today. And in those areas, the public sector is making investments and is driving forward some change. But there are opportunities to do that in a manner that enables the private sector to respond and ensure that their business models are more effective. So there's a strong driver for us to ensure that the public sector's planned investments in transport services will actually act as an enabler through the infrastructure element. So there's lots of different examples given through the slides where we've talked about mobility hubs, transport interchanges, as you've rightly set out already. The third part of the strategy is to utilise the West Midlands geographic position within a national market that's changing very, very swiftly. So we've already spoken in quite a lot of detail about how that people move through our region. We don't just have people active in our region, we have people moving through the region as well. And it's really important that we make sure that we are utilising changes that are going on in the national system and ensuring that the West Midlands is a key part of that. We are an interchange for national travel. We see that obviously with the transport, with the rail infrastructure, etc. There's opportunities that have come out through the consultation process where we can clearly see that there's a role for us to play in making sure that we have the right infrastructure in place to enable both freight logistics to be effective, and then the move from freight down to the smaller vans and things that Councillor Zaffer was speaking about earlier in terms of that transition. So whether those are hydrogen, whether they're electric, we have to put some plans in place to enable that transition to happen. So those are the three pillars of the strategy that we proposed. We went through the consultation process and have gathered a lot of extra information that will support the plan that we're working on now. So I hope that answers your question, Councillor Courts. And then if you'd like us to go through this quickly through the slides as planned, that's entirely your decision.
It doesn't answer the question. I mean, I see what the strategy is, but what infrastructure are you talking about?
Okay, Kate, would you like to flick back through and give some of the examples?
Sure, it's a range of infrastructure, Chair, I think is probably the answer. So there's a range of infrastructure from the kind of quite low powered electrical charging infrastructure, which is, as you say, already kind of local authorities are leading on. There's a good plan in place, but there are also known constraints around connecting those to the underlying electrical infrastructure. So so that becomes a real cost barrier to implementation. And there's also a facilitation role around the works that are coming through from the private sector. So there's we have a range of kind of electrical charging points to allow the to people to have confidence to transition to zero emission vehicles. But there's also as Charles said, there's market failures around the kind of much larger and more powerful charging infrastructure required. So the 150 kilowatt plus what we're calling transit stations, until there is a known demand for those, we're not going to see those come forward. But actually, we see that there's a real confidence that we would need to invest in those early to allow people confidence to transition to that. And that was agreed in the WMC board in January 2020 to take that leadership position. And that work is very much ongoing, with business cases being developed for what that looks like. There is also a multimodal transport solution that needs to be kind of brought forward. So we really need to kind of support and facilitate projects which are already happening. Again, not wanting, as you said, kind of granny to suck eggs. We need to provide our energy systems expertise into these projects to make sure that they allow the kind of flexibility around different modes of transport kind of going forward. As you said, some of these transport options aren't available yet, but we need to make the investment decisions now to help to make sure that those are kind of future-proofed investments, and we're not investing in something which is going to be obsolete technology in 5 to 10 years time. So there's definitely expertise and required and in a partnership and collaborative approach to be able to bring forward those sorts of investments.
I've got 3 points to make. For your maps, I'm not sure the charging points as far as Solihull concerned are out of date. But I mean, that's a detail. But the second point, which I keep getting to, what actually we're talking about doing. I understand the strategy, I understand the philosophy, but what are we talking about? Looking for a series of sites to put something on. Is it fast EV charging? Is it hydrogen? Is it all of those things? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, that is exactly what we're talking about. So there's a range of infrastructure requirements.
No. You're saying a range of infrastructure.
Hey, do you want to flick through to the actions within the strategy that have been identified?
Sure. So in terms of the infrastructure, yes, there is an action around transit stations. There's 10 proposed transit stations across the West Midlands, which will provide that ultra rapid charging infrastructure requirements. There is also multimodal transport interchanges. These are led by different organisations, but we need all this infrastructure to come forward in order for the plan to work, essentially. And we, according to our 3 pillars that are around kind of planning that infrastructure, utilising the public sector investment that is already going on in this place and making sure that we get the co-benefits from it, and then thinking about our national, our position within the national infrastructure, we have a range of actions that have kind of fallen out of those 3 pillars.
Well, I mean, I understand all this range of actions, but you've said, right, this is about looking for us. Why don't we say we need a range of sites identify a range of sites to plug the gaps that are not there? Is it as simple as that?
That is one element of it. Yes, there's a range of sites. There is also a big significant element around existing fleets and how we allow people within existing fleets, not within the public sector, but also private fleets as well. How do we enable those organisations to transition to zero emission vehicles as well? So that what infrastructure they need, is it site based or is it a public?
What is our role in this? Are you going to pay for them? Well, no. But what is our role in telling the private sector? I mean, does it mean we've got to say to government, you've got to have electric vehicles, but you'll end up having to pay for it, or hydrogen vehicles, but the tech for hydrogen is not there yet? And this is the problem. You're talking about a multimodal, but we don't know what hydrogen really means yet. What it really means. They're still making hydrogen the way I made it 60 years ago in a test tube.
Agreed that the hydrogen case is not fully developed yet, and there are hydrogen options around sort of utilising very high powered electrical connections, as you say, to create hydrogen on site. So that is an option in order kind of to future proof. One of the big options, the action that we've taken around hydrogen is to support an ongoing feasibility study, which is being led by Tidal Energy Park is one of the partners, but also Cenex, is to look at the feasibility of having hydrogen hubs between the West Midlands and Hull to see actually what does that look like, particularly for very heavy goods vehicles, which would otherwise be quite challenging to transition to other kind of zero emission modes, essentially. So it's to support that feasibility study which is taking place.
No, I get that, and I support that. I've no, I'm actually a big fan of hydrogen. I just think that we can't assume that it will be the answer. I mean, one answer might be to pump more into the energy from hydrogen into the grid and then just take it out as electricity again. You know, there's different ways. I just don't think we've obviously need to continue work, need to give a tech on these things. But you know, what I'm saying is that you've got a summary of actions, but some of them are very, very vague. And, you know, they're saying, well, local authority should do this and private partnership. And I think we need to crystallize this down to, and I think it'll be a half a dozen points that we are going to, you know, we realistically can do.
Agreed, Councillor Courts, and that's what the next stage is. So we went out to consultation with this information. We've received a lot of feedback from that, but that hasn't been collated yet, and it will be collated by the end of this month.
Well, you are asking for approval of a strategy, which A, isn't there, and B, by the sounds of it, hasn't been finalised.
No, we're not asking for approval of anything. If that was what came across in the papers, that's incorrect. We were asked to bring this information to let you know what was going on with the strategy development. It's not complete, and we're not asking for any approval.
The strategy contains an outline plan for delivery. If agreed, then these actions require further resources to progress. That's under next steps.
Yeah, that it's highlighting that once we get to a point that we've agreed those actions, that they will require resources, because there is currently no programme within the WMCA to actually deliver this going forward. It will have to be done in partnership with others. So that's just to highlight that we don't have committed resources to delivering this going forward.
Well, I mean, before you get them, you're going to have to demonstrate quite clearly what these, the art of the possible. Some of these things are clearly we want to do, because I mean, on the climate change agenda, many things, frankly, are going to be a bit experimental, and I get all that. But, you know, it's absolutely pointless us setting up a whole infrastructure when we don't really know what the end game plan is. And if one of those important actions is to set up, a series of sites, let's just say we need it does say here series of sites, but a lot of these things are local authority partners. Well, you know, that actually they don't have a lot of money, and they don't have the people, so they were
government making the money available, Councillor Courts. So there are government funding streams being identified that we will be able to work with the local authorities to access. And the point is that Energy Capital is able to work with the transport departments to provide that energy expertise. But it is really very much it does really need to be driven by the transport strategy as to what move wants to be made. And obviously we are also in a position where we're waiting for the next version of the local transport plan. So that's why this isn't being finalised now. It's being developed alongside that transport plan, which again was set out in the slides. So that there is a timing element, but what we're trying to do is flag up the potential need for investment and the potential need for resources to look at that going forward. So we aren't asking for any decisions to be made at this stage.
Right, well, I'm clear on that, because you're not getting a decision for a start, not from me. We're not a decision-making board. It'll have to go to the board, and people are going to say, well, what is our role in this? What are outcomes? So I really like to see if anyone else wants to comment on this. But, you know, just to summarise, I mean, there's a list of actions here, and some, I mean, they're all logical, but many are very, very vague. And I really want to know quite crisply, and I don't want 100 pages. I want a page of what actually is being proposed in out there, because I understand that action is needed, but I don't want to get it lost in 100 things, which, when really, if we're looking for sites, we're looking for sites. If we want to support certainly the hydrogen thing, I think is an important one. So that
will be produced by the end of the month, Councillor Courts.
Right. Okay. Any other comments from people? Anyone on board? I can't see any virtual hands.
Hey, do you want to take the slides off now?
Chair, if it's helpful, Councillor Fowler, I would agree with what the comments that you've made, and no disrespect to anybody, but I have to say, when I was reading this yesterday,
I found it extremely long and needed a bit more detail. But actual fact, because it is so long, I think the chair is right. You do lose with respect to the will to live, and because you don't get the actual the meat on the bone, so to speak, and I think a bit more brevity of what actions you were looking at would have been a far better. And I agree with the chair that it's more for a board than this board.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I think. Thank you. I mean, obviously we have a role in that, but you know, I'll stick to the one. I will reject if I get this again. I won't even hold the meeting. Simple as that. I spent hours trying to understand what the hell was going on, and it was seen to me quite clear a decision was being made, was being required, and now I'm here it isn't. So anyway, let's move on. I think we will obviously come back to what is involved in this. So I think that'll do, and I don't see anyone else. So let's move on to get my act together. COP, is it COP 26? Is that you, Steve, on the screen? I see suddenly he's loomed above me like a god.
Sorry, Councillor Courts, I don't think I've ever been referred to as that, but thank you.
Well, it's the virtual world, isn't it? When people appear on screens. I know. Anyway, over to you, Steve.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. If I may, Chairman and board members, I'd like to just share my screen with a short presentation to update everyone on COP26. I did share the slides yesterday. I'm sorry, it was a little short notice, but if you're okay, I'll just pull that up now as we talk. So if you can let me know when you can see the slides, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
You can see it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So just a brief update on COP26. As we've always said in the region, COP26 is a fortnight in Glasgow to a degree, but actually it's a lot more for us. And we see it both in the lead up to COP and after COP as well as putting the net zero agenda fair and square in the region. We had the Net Zero Summit in July, which I know many people attended, and Councillor Courts, you chaired a session on that. That was, if you like, the start of our build up to COP. But I thought it was useful to give everyone an overview of where COP26 is at the moment. So we know there's an event in Glasgow, but what government have done is effectively created a shadow COP, which they're calling domestic COP26. This is respecting, I think, that they want the Glasgow event to be very much an international and global conference and event, and possibly to discourage people from attending to a degree because of COVID uncertainties. Government have established something called domestic COP26, which is a creation of regional green zones. So in Glasgow, there's a green zone, which is UK government led, and they're mirroring that across the UK. So we're developing some plans for events within the region under the regional green zone domestic COP26 agenda, but we will be looking to make sure that West Midlands is well represented on that global stage in Glasgow as well. So we have, if you like, two things in play at the same time over that fortnight, as well as a number of events in the build up to COP and afterwards. If I may, just to remind board members of the objectives as we see them. So for West Midlands, we've always said that COP should be an opportunity for showcasing the region for trade and investment opportunities, creating a real buzz around net zero amongst both our citizens and businesses, and I'll touch on that in a moment, but also that opportunity for a different conversation with central government. And I mentioned the Net Zero Summit in July with UK 100, and that is leading to new conversations around how regions and cities can help and local authorities can help deliver net zero in a practical way. So those are our objectives. The UK objectives from COP clearly to position the UK on the race to net zero as a leader in that, but a very clear emphasis on trade and investment opportunities through that work, and a focus on skills, jobs and skills coming out of COP26. And I think we may see more work and emphasis placed on the skills agenda for net zero following from COP, as from some of the conversations I've had. just to share with partners, this is on the COP presidency website, but this is the agenda of the programme. In Glasgow, you can see there are themed days throughout that fortnight, and the regional green zone in effect should mirror each of those themed areas. So the work that we're looking to do is focus on Thursday, the 11th of November, the cities, regions and built environment, and make sure that the message from the West Midlands to government is that we can play a leadership role in that arena. But equally, we will be hopefully inputting to areas such as transport and finance and energy where we can. It should be emphasised at this point that what you're seeing on the screen now is pretty much all the detail there is about the programme and events, and all of the partners are struggling at the moment to understand exactly what their involvement will be, but it will become clearer nearer the time. At any point, if there are any questions as I'm going, please do just interrupt.
Can I just there? My, what a programme!
Yes.
I mean, you talk about, I thought it was a couple of days. I didn't realise there was 2 weeks of it. Yeah. You're going to need to, I mean, I know you sent separate requests for me, you know, odd things. You're going to need to make quite clear what time commitment, you know, what you need of me, because and others indeed involved, because this is quite vast, isn't it?
It is, and I genuinely think, Jem, that the Glasgow COP. I think as long as we have a presence where we're talking to government, we're talking to other partners, I think we feel that that's probably right level. We would really like to emphasise the regional green zone and the opportunity there, because I think government are encouraging that for a particular reason. They want to see what regions and cities can do. So whilst this is all happening in Glasgow, we are going to be putting as much, if not more, emphasis and weight on what we do within the region during that fortnight. As I say, with a close focus on November the 11th, but actually across the fortnight as well with our other partners. And we've been doing a lot of work with a range of partners in the public and private sector as well around what they're up to during that fortnight. Sorry, thank you. Just to touch on that, I've talked about the collaboration. We are looking at the potential of a small West Midlands event in Glasgow, but we need to understand whether that would be a valuable opportunity or not. If it's all being downplayed, it may be a lesser opportunity. I did want to emphasise that there is a genuine enthusiasm and energy behind COP, not just from that fortnight, but in the build up to and what happens afterwards, through a whole range of partners. And I've just put some of them on the screen there. And we are coordinating, coalescing around this to get the net zero agenda across. And as you'll see in a few moments, we are putting up a dedicated website where we can share partner events, amplify the net zero message more widely, and as we said at the objectives and the outset, create that real buzz. The strapline at the bottom is some of our other partners on a bigger stage, bigger scale, and I'm having conversations with all of those at the moment. The key one, obviously, is Cabinet Office to understand exactly what is planned in Glasgow. But our relationships with UK 100, C40, ICLEI and others are equally important, and big thanks to Jackie for the introductions that she's given to me to those organisations, and we'll see a lot of work developing with those over the next couple of months, and as I say, beyond COP as well.
Steve, I've got a bone to pick here.
Yep, sorry.
There are a number of eminent councillors on this chat, and we're just local authorities. You know, there's not 7 actually, it's more than that. I mean, a lot of my colleagues are doing a hell of a lot of work here, so I hope the recognition that's being done to everyone will come out. So I know you mean that, and I know it's shorthand, but I've got to speak in defence of my colleagues.
No, thank you for that, and it is difficult to capture all that we're doing. So we're working with a lot of your officers around the programme in the build up to and during COP. And what we'd really like to do, and this is actually a strong emphasis on that regional green zone from government, is that this is an opportunity for us to showcase what local authorities are doing, and then enhancing that as well beyond further with academia and industry. But there is a strong focus on that local authority leadership, leverage, influence that they have. So our regional green zone event on the 11th, that will be a key part of that, and we'd certainly love to work with the leaders of the authorities across the region to give it a genuinely regional flavour and picture. So thank you for that prompt. If I may very quickly just touch on a couple of key events coming up. On the 21st of September, there is a big blue bus, effectively, the Zero Carbon Battle Bus. This is an initiative launched by BEIS and with the organisation Planet Mark, which is doing a tour of the UK in the lead up to COP in Glasgow. We've secured it for the 21st of September in Centenary Square in Birmingham between 2 and 5. And you'll see just from that image that effectively the bus is a bit of a publicity stunt, but it's a good one because it raises the profile of the net zero agenda. But we'd like to have other public engagement events going on around it. So we're working with, for example, National Express to see whether they could bring a hydrogen bus to tell that story. So, and some other partners to exhibit at the same time and showcase those opportunities. So we want to make a little bit more of it than just a photo opportunity. And then between 3 and 5, we have an interactive session where Planet Mark will be talking about some of the principles of net zero, but we'll be really showcasing some of the case studies across the West Midlands. The guidance we've had from BEIS and Planet Mark is that those case studies should be the stories of what organisations are experiencing, not necessarily what they're putting in place for others, but what are they themselves doing, how have they experienced the challenges of net zero, what's some of the best practice that we can share nationally. I will send a link to board members for the Eventbrite login for that, if that's okay.
Steve, is the battle bus only going to Birmingham or is it going anywhere else?
We tried desperately, Councillor, to get it in Wolverhampton, Birmingham and Coventry at least, or across the region, and we tried so hard. And the answer was quite simple. It's one location and one location only. So we tried to get it to a place which would have the most public profile. And Birmingham actually was their choice as well. And so unfortunately, that's the only location in the West Midlands. It is a real disappointment because we were hoping for it all. It's actually going to Worcestershire on the 20th, going to Worcester University on the 20th. We were hoping to get it to Coventry in the Future Mobility Zone on the 22nd. That's not possible. And the bus is then going to the East Midlands for the second half of that week. It's a good opportunity in terms of raising the message, but we would have much rather have had a series of events across the region where the bus effectively was just an anchor and a draw. That we just couldn't swing that, unfortunately, with our Planet Mark colleagues. So apologies for that.
Okay.
We did try our best. So that's on the 21st of September, and there are other events. As I say, I'll share a link to the website for other events and for any bookings and opportunities. I did want to touch very quickly on the regional green zone itself, and this is our outline plan for the day where we focus on some of the key strengths of the region: future mobility, local energy systems and the built environment. It does say details are to follow because the regional green zone announcement is only weeks old, so we have had to respond rapidly to that, and we will be building this programme over the next couple of weeks, definitely with a point about regional partnership. So please, we will be reaching out to all of you to collaborate as much as possible on that. And I'm sorry there's not more detail at this stage, but it is very recent. But we say that COP isn't just for those 2 weeks and beyond COP. We'd like to really use it as an opportunity to build momentum around the net zero agenda. We're hoping to host an event shortly after COP as a sort of debrief. What does actually COP mean for region? What's the learning from it? What can we do? What can we develop even further? Again, it's early days on that because one, we're not sure what is going to come out of COP, but we would like to do that with all of our local authority partners, with our research and academic partners, and with some industry representatives as well. And you've heard the expression home of the green industrial revolution. That phrase is really gaining traction, momentum, particularly from our industry partners, but actually across the region as a whole. And we want to keep that going for all of the opportunities around trade and investment, regional identity, and getting that message across wider partners and into government that this is what we represent as a region. I'm nearly there. I think this is the last slide, and it's just to say that alongside all of this, clearly, if we're creating a buzz, we need the right communications, we need the right assets. So we're developing a dedicated web page for the home of the Green Industrial Revolution. There'll be a social media campaign around that, a comprehensive communications plan. I'm sorry about the noise in the background as the truck goes past. The message that we're putting out to all of our partners, I've just come off a steering group meeting, is that we'd really like to amplify any events or any activities that are going on. So at any time, if anyone or their officers or other partners know of events that are happening on this agenda, please do share them with me. We'll load it onto the website, we'll share it on social media. That's really the buzz we're trying to create. So that's an overview of where we are in the build up to, and I'll stop sharing if I may and take any questions. And I will just close the window because it's very noisy somewhere.
Okay, I just want to know what the dates are. What are the dates? Because I didn't realize.
Sorry.
So we can all put dates in the diary.
Sorry, yeah. So the key dates at the moment, 21st of September for the interactive session and battle bus.
Yeah.
There are a number of other events which I can share outside of this. The other key then date is the 11th of November for the regional green zone event, and we'll have data. So those are the two anchor dates from here going in. But there are a whole range of other events that, for example, University of Birmingham we're collaborating on, University of Warwick have, and there is I'll share the link to our website where we have some of these other dates, but those are the two key anchor ones. And then the third is, sorry.
The actual time zone it looked like 31st of October.
Oh, sorry. The COP26 time zone is 31st of October, which is a Sunday, through to the 12th of November. So it's that fortnight's kicking off on the Sunday, events closing on the 12th.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any points? Massively important for us in the region. We've been stressing it everywhere. Cost, so we want to make as much as we can, and as to what we're doing across the region. So that's
Chair,
yeah.
Sorry, it's Councillor Fowler. Just at one point, and thank you, Steve, for that. I found that very interesting. You mentioned the event on the 11th of November. Mm-hmm. Which one was that again?
So the 11th of November is what we're putting at the moment as what we're calling the Regional Green Zone Day for the West Midlands, because it reflects the cities, regions and built environment event in Glasgow. We've been led by government to believe that events in the regions will be streamed to the conference in Glasgow. We're not quite sure how that would work across all the disparate regions in the UK, but it is a major event, and we would like that to really showcase and put the message strongly about strength of West Midlands. So that's the 11th of November.
Sorry, Steve, did you say that was happening in Birmingham, did you say?
So no, that event, location to be confirmed, and what we'd like to do, even if it's in a single place as a physical presence, we really want to get a full West Midlands coverage on this. And the three areas around future mobility and local energy systems and built environment mean that we can, if you like, hopefully give almost host functions to each of those areas across the region. So even if it's not, I think it would be difficult to have three separate events all on one day across the region. But even if we have a single physical location, a lot of this will be online and virtual, because it's got to be streamed to Glasgow anyway. So there will be a virtual hybrid event across that as well. And we would like to make sure that we give that profile across the region as much as possible. Not only because it's right that we reflect, as Councillor Court said, all the work that local authorities are doing, but actually it's really important for central government, because that conversation around what cities and regions and local authorities can do is gathering pace with government at the moment. So we need to make sure that we're well positioned at the forefront of that.
And the other two very quick points, Chair, is that obviously with the 11th of November, it's the timing as well, because it is Remembrance Day. So a lot of us will be, at particular areas, remembering our lost friends from around the world. And my final comment is that with the COP26, and I'm sure that the chair would welcome that, it's actually seeing from that the benefits and the added value to the West Midlands, and I look forward, as many others do, to hearing that as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you. May I very, very quickly, one of the key partners I didn't focus on. We're working very closely with West Midlands Growth Company, who are developing a really strong low carbon sector proposition for investment. And I think that's an equally important aspect of this, is using this as a showcase opportunity for international investment into the region as well as all of the net zero achievements as well.
I mean, one of the things I want to see come out of COP is the publicity and the promotion. I mean, we talk a lot about people behaviour, but this isn't for governments that are going to make the difference here. It's for businesses and organisations, ultimately, people behaviour and all those things. And we really need to develop that strain of thinking if we're to make this successful. Because, OK, we want to influence Russia, but across the world, and frankly, we'll be wasting our time if Russia doesn't change. But this is a big vehicle for change. Suzanne, you've got your virtual hand, and I can see it.
Hey, that worked. Thank you, Chair. Steve, I'm from the Environment Agency, so obviously part of DEFRA Group. So really interested to join up because obviously we've got quite a lot going on. And we're also looking at things like green finance, which I think is really important around all of this. And so sharing experience around green finance, where that's heading, and some of the stuff and the roles that we've got to play. So I'd really like a catch up after this. But I think it's really important, Chair, that we do consider green finance in all of the things we've been talking about today.
Sorry, if I may, Chair. Just very quickly, I share that, and yes, I'd love to have a catch up afterwards, if I may, Suzanne. The key messages which are coming out very, very strongly for involvement of the cities and regions in Glasgow. I've talked about Regions and Cities Day, which you're absolutely right, Councillor Fowler. It's a shame it's on the 11th, and there will be calls elsewhere, which are absolutely right. Is finance and green finance, and I think there's a strong opportunity for us to be involved with that event, even if it's virtual and streamed into Glasgow. But I do wonder if we've talked about a regional event on the 11th, if there's an appetite and we've got capacity to do it, to see whether there are smaller events that we could do on days which mirror and the activities, just because we don't have to mirror COP if we don't want to get funding, etc. But actually, equally, we do see it as an opportunity to put a different spotlight on an event, because it's happening in Glasgow at the same time. So I think that's a great call on finance. Thank you for that.
OK, thanks. I don't think, Suzanne, in any way we're not thinking about finance, because it's a theme that comes through most of our programmes. I mean, the reality is, that the money isn't going to be there from government to do the range of things that are needed. It's going to need co-financing. It's going to need, the whole the financing from raising money for green bonds and the like, but even that is an answer to everything. So finance is the key to it, but frankly, that's where one of my opening remarks was to make sure we target money most wisely and where it's going to achieve the changes we need at scale, because we keep losing that point. We're all for headlines, we're all for sound bites. We're actually losing the plot as regards what it is that we need to do to make the changes. So yeah, thank you for bringing it to the attention. It's always good to do that. I'm going to move on, I think, Steve. I think we've had a great, you're well over your 10 minutes, but unfortunately I bought a few earlier on. So thank you very much. I'm going to press on now to Richard or Jackie. No.
It's me, yeah.
Okay.
It's me, Councillor Courts. Richard, unfortunately, isn't very well today, so I will cover this item off. So really, this is a paper that we've added for information. So at the last Energy and Environment Board, we had useful projects come, and we had an item on the circular economy where they outlined the work that they were doing with us to produce a route map for the region on circular economy. That's going to the Combined Authority Board. So we've also attached a paper, or the Combined Authority paper, that will accompany the summary of the route map for this board's information. There have been a couple of changes since, but not significant changes to that paper, and those papers are going out today. So I'm happy to take any questions on the paper or the summary of the route map, councillor Courts. But I know this board had a good opportunity to discuss the circular economy work at the last meeting.
Yeah, but I mean, certainly, this is one of the most important subjects that we will be dealing with. It's all back to, you know, the cutting out waste, unnecessary usage, stop burning up the scarce raw materials and all that. So that's extremely important. So as a principle, in many ways, I'm going to reflect the comments I made earlier on under zero emission vehicle strategy. In the end, we've really got to look at what we really are meaning to be doing by this, because you know, I don't know lots about lots of things, but I was in business for a long time and run stuff for a long time, and there's comments here straying into the building industry. I set up a refurbishment division. I know what it's the risks and all those things are. You're not just going to be able to tell professional people how to do it. So I think you know, this goes back to my initial comments. We really need to pick our projects wisely, because I picked on a couple here. You know, embedding circular design, I think, is a key principle, is absolutely right. Stop single use. So there's messaging there. But you know, are we in a position? I know nothing about food manufacture, but question mark. Does anyone else who's been involved in this? But there'll be people out there who do. So you know, realistically, the change will have to be driven by business, and I'm not clear what our role will be in some of those areas. It's probably going to be market driven. I mean, you take stuff on the construction industry. I mean, circular construction is one of the most wasteful industries that there is. You know, I think I've told the story of when I was in business. I did, you know, an exercise as to how many skips do you need to build a house. Well, it depends on how good the manager is. And that's the truth of it. It can be, I'll pluck figures, but it can be 3, it can be 10 if you've got a useless manager. And the fact is, not every manager is good. So, you know, it's that sort of thinking. And it's the efficiencies of scale. You know, is it really, how many times now does a builder come on site and he's got a new saw, because at the end of the job it gets thrown away. It's sort of, we're in a much more wasteful world. So I just think we need to treat this with care. There's reference to hubs for recovering material exchange. I mean, that sounds like a scrapyard to me. And, you know, hands up who wants one of those. They exist. And likewise, there are places. There's one in Warwickshire, not that far away from here, from near Coventry, which actually does recycle materials. But is it efficient to do so in terms of the labour and management and all those things required? So this is really tough. And I go back to what I said about that other paper. We need to focus on what realistically the end game is likely to be. So I'm just gonna leave it at that, because there's words of warning there, and I need to be, when I present this to the board, you know, I'm going to make it quite clear about my initial comments just now. There's reference, I think, about governance. Well, I mean, you know, I don't know what that is. I think we should just forget that, because I don't think it means it, because there were complaints about what the governance, appropriate internal and region-wide governance. Well, you know, if we're not into bureaucracies. Okay, so
yeah, yes, and I think we've been quite clear that there's 2 priorities for which we will look to be developing business cases in that paper. I think we are not suggesting that as a combined authority we would seek to lead everything that's been raised around the circular economy. A lot of it is working with partners to create the right conditions for a lot of this to be private sector led, understanding that waste and material flows across local authority boundaries. But a lot of it does need further work. So I don't think we are, well, we're not suggesting that we would step into the space for all of those things, but they have been raised as potential opportunities that we have across the region, with us looking initially at 2 priorities, but also respecting that the private sector has a really key role to play, that we're not going to do everything in this space.
Well, it is, but what I'm saying is I want you to take it from the other end and look at what realistic. If we are talking about finding a site, then let's say we're looking for finding a site, but let's go through all this, and at the end of the day, we fall over because we're just not going to achieve that objective. I've got Suzanne who wants to come in. Please.
Thank you, Chair. And it's just a little bit of matter of detail, but I'm perhaps linking a little bit back to you. But one of the most obvious things seems to be missing from all of this circular economy stuff is water. We are in water stress now as an area, and it has to be something that has to be part of that now, that circular economy, and it needs to be taken in, and that needs to link into being quite clear of the actions you want to take if we want to actually we do that in the right way. So for me, that's just a big observation that this just isn't far enough for me as a circular economy document.
Okay, Suzanne, let me just rephrase what you just said and put it in form of a challenge. One way of approaching this is to say, an example, in the development of new buildings, what steps are being taken to make better use of water, let's say, of reusing water? Because we all see these eco houses where they're doing all these wonderful things, but the reality is they're probably not efficient for certain for development at scale, and maybe that's where the work might be interesting to see, well, what could be delivered at scale, because I come back to that. I'm not interested in one house or one little. We need scale, and if you can't deliver scale, well, there's two things: you either don't do it, or you actually stimulate a market. So little businesses out there are suddenly going to dream up, I've got this wizzo idea of putting recycled water in houses, and then you're motoring, and that's the real way of getting change. I'm going to stop rabbiting on because we only allowed a very short time for this, but I had to say those points in the light of the comments I've had. And thanks, Suzanne. You're right with that, Jackie? You got it?
Yeah, that's fine.
I can't see any other virtual hands. Either people are doing their emails or something, or they're agreeing with what I said. So hopefully the latter.
Listening and agreeing, Chair.
That's good. Look, people are going to have to shout out, because this is what I do. I keep trying to drive the agenda forward. Right, natural environment plan. Now, this is to me one of the most important. Well, because I like biodiversity. That we're doing, and again, there's always the art of the possible, but there's also the art of behaviour change. So do you want to pick this up, Jackie? We've got the plan.
Yes. So this item came to the March Energy and Environment Board. So this is the natural. It came as the Natural Capital Plan. It's now called the Natural Environment Plan. The plan that came was in the form of a board paper. So what we've done is we've worked from that board paper with local authorities and with a number of environmental organisations across the region to produce the document that you now have in front of you. And we're really pleased that it's been endorsed by a whole range of environmental organisations as well. What we do in that plan is set out a vision for the West Midlands in terms of natural environment, with some indicators, and look at 4 priority areas, which include improving access to green and blue space, looking at wildlife corridors, so those things that transcend local authority boundaries, looking at tree and hedgerow planting, and then looking at some of the enabling actions, which does include reflections on finance. And how we're going to get some of the things done that we need to both improve access, but also in terms of restoring and enhancing the region's biodiversity. So we launched the plan yesterday in conjunction with the Wildlife Trust for Birmingham and the Black Country. They have just received some government funding to support the Love Your River Stour project. So we went down to do the launch with them, and we got some good media coverage for the plan as well, both in the local press. Also, it made ITV Central and Midlands yesterday as well. So now again, in that plan, we have a list of actions in the back where we're clearly saying where we would lead, where we would enable, where we'll convene other stakeholders, but being very clear that this is the delivery of this plan is going to require a collaborative effort amongst all the region stakeholders, both working with local authorities, and a number of the really good projects that local authorities are delivering are cited in that plan, as well as some of the other delivery organisations like the Wildlife Trust, the Canal and River Trust, the RSPB, National Trust, all the other organisations that are in there.
Okay, that's great. Just in case anyone wants to come in, I think you got some. What I'm quite pleased about here is you've actually got some specifics here. I mean, the community green grants, I think we just need. Well, I hope we'll get some decent response for that, because that is all about, you know, access to green space. The virtual forest, I'm less happy about, and I just think well, the numbers we've got is not enough. I have a feeling it's because people don't want to share their tree planting, and I think we do need to revigorate these efforts. I was pleased when I went to Snowy. I thought I saw some trees, new trees there I hadn't seen before, and you know, it's that sort of thing that we want to encourage. So I do think we probably need to just think the virtual forest, because I mean, I know we've done 25,000 in our first year. I think we'll be on target for another 25,000. That's our $250,000 for the decade. So, and others will be doing equally the same. So I'm more interested in a regional contribution there. I'll let Oliver come in. But on the wildlife corridors, I mean, that's an extension of the wildlife ways thing that we did, is it? Which I think has been phenomenal. Great. Okay, because that is a wonderful program. Oliver, I've got loads of people want to speak.
Can I
Oliver?
just ask you about your tree planting, because I get asked about this quite often. At Solihull have done 25,000. So I guess my question is, what have you done and where? Is it whips or further size of trees? Is it on streets? Is it on open spaces? Have you got land? So in terms of trying to replicate that, because we've obviously made a commitment, we're going to plant more trees. They're quite contentious on streets, because you either in Warsaw they either seem to love them or they absolutely hate them and they want them removed. So we're generally going towards the green spaces element, because it keeps it away and we can sell it as part of a nature. So I'd just be interested to understand a bit more about that. If you've got some documents or something you can share offline, if you haven't got the time or whatever, that'd be really helpful.
I mean, Jackie, I think I'm quite happy to share. I mean, we're doing a lot. I don't think we're unique, because I know many councils are doing stuff. I'll simplify this because it's relevant to everybody. The issue with tree planting is not trees. The issue is land. I mean, much as I'd like tree-lined streets, the remains are all sorts of cables. It's not realistic. And I'm going back to the business of scale. If you're doing 25,000 a year, you know, that's going some. It's something like 20 acres a year. Is it 10 to 20 acres a year? So have we done it? We had an audit of a council land, looking for pockets of land, look at our parks to see what we could fit in. We think we have either the land or have assembled it for what we did last year. We've got very interesting new, we called it Woodland of Hope in Shirley, where we're doing a COVID, you know, wood of reflection type thing. So we're doing some formalized trees. We're also doing it scale with whips, and we're also engaging with landowners, and we're doing that quite big time actually. I've had 2 or 3 meetings with odd people, you know, with landowners. Now you may or may not have them, so it's a whole range.
Is that because you've got the Meriden Gap effectively and some of the farmland, or they'll give up, or?
Well, they're not so keen on giving up farmland.
No, I won't imagine not.
No, we do have the Meriden Gap, and we do have landowners, and we've also cozied up to them. But it involves a whole range of approaches, and particularly calling for people to join in. So it is tough. Quite happy to share our action. We've only we just increased our resource to increase the number of people. the first 2 years is going to be fairly easy. I mean, Solihull tends to not make a big fuss about stuff, and if it undertakes to do something, it does it properly. So I know my officers, I don't know whether they're listening, will be worrying, because I'll be at them at the end of next year as to what their next year's targets will be. So you know, that's the way it is. We're going to be very thorough in winkling out the new tree planting, but happy to take this offline and have a discussion, because it's
that'd be very helpful. Thank you.
It's a wonderful thing, and I planted a woodland myself about a mile ago for my daughter, and honestly, in 10 years, it's some of the trees are bigger than the tree behind you. It's seriously what can be done in a dozen years. Right, I'm going to move to Peter, because I'm beginning to run over time.
Thank you, Chairman. Certainly support the comments that were made by Oliver just now. I certainly welcome more tree planting, pocket parks as well. And I know that for my side, as a ward member for Birmingham City Council for the area of Harborne, I know that there's a lot of residents said they'd love to see more and more trees. And I think it's about promoting it as well, Chair. In fact, I had another computer given to me, and I realised that they'd taken all the stuff off me, and I've just actually gone back onto the virtual forest and actually put it onto the West Midlands tab that I've got on here, which I can now look at and see how that we can promote it. And I'm just wondering, Chair, how again, working with our local authorities, how the local authorities can actually promote it even further through their councillors to their residents, and particularly promoting the virtual forest and how they can get involved. And of course, councillors will also help as well and get involved to find locations in their particular areas. Thank you, Chair.
Right, great, Jackie. That's over to you. You've had comments back there, lovely, fantastic comments. So I hope you can make use of those.
Yeah, and just to Councillor Fowler's point, I have what I call a natural capital officers group. So I bring together the officers that work on this from across the combined authority. I think it's every 8 weeks. So I will raise the virtual forest at the next meeting, particularly as we come into tree planting season.
And thank you for that, Jackie, because I know that both myself and Wazim are very much on that. In fact, I think I do recall Wazim talking about in our more deprived areas about putting more and more trees in those areas, which I support, although he did talk about reducing them in certain other areas, so that didn't go down too well. But that again, through you, Jackie, with collaboration with Birmingham City Council and of course others, of how we can actually promote more and more trees, which obviously helps the reduction in carbon emissions. Thank you.
And makes a better environment, and it actually, people just like it. I mean, dogs like it as well, but I'm afraid, but
agreed, Chair.
It honestly is but you're either into this or you're not. One of the issues I have to say we get is whether it's net or gross, and I keep getting the odd snites. Well, you're taking down this lovely tree, and the truth is we are, because sometimes trees have to go, and I don't think it's productive to keep, to have those sort of discussions. I think we have to keep the drive of maximising whatever we can. I'm really pleased with the enthusiasm shown here. I think we can make quite a bit of this.
And Chair, can I just come back with one more very quick thing, Jackie, because it's just hit me, is that when we are putting trees in, I think certainly the City Council have mentioned about the finance on maintenance of those trees, 30 years or something. So it's another thing to think on. I'm not sure whether that's incorporated in it, but it was certainly something that our chaps brought to my attention, was about the cost of maintenance over many years. Thank you, Chair.
My officers have made that very same point. It's fine you putting trees in, but someone's got to look after them. So it's very, very, very relevant point. Okay, happy to move on. I think we're actually not too bad for time. I was going to say to spend more time on the forward plan. I think, Jackie, you have an appetite for saying, well, it might be better if we dealt with this as a session another month. But I will tell you that, I have a lot to say about it. So not some good, some not critical, but observational. So if you want to do that, we can, or I can brief you about separately about the queries I have on it.
Yeah. I mean, we can take any queries offline. I'm happy to do that. We circulate this programme update with every Environment and Energy Board meeting we have. And I think if there's anything in there that members of this board would like us to bring to a future meeting or provide an update on, then we'd be happy to do that. But it's really just to show the progress that we're making across the board.
Yeah, it'd be quite handy, I think, if we turned this round and actually looked at it as a first item, in order to. I don't. The risk then is you take the meat away from any other agenda items later on. But I think it would be nice, members, if we took an overview of the work of the environmental team, and we could also, feed in our comments and maybe stuff we want to, emphasise or the opposite. Okay, that actually is the last item. So we've captured time, which is good. Has anybody got any other business that they want to cover? I can't see everybody on the screen, but someone will alert me if there is. Well, I don't know really. I mean, it would always be nice, I think, to have one in advance of COP, but I don't know whether people got it in their diary really. I do. My gut feel is in front of COP rather than behind it, and I would ask people to have a look at the programme and feed in any comments they've got, so that we anticipate that. So, okay, any other? I can't see anyone with their hands up. So,
if I may, just through you, Chair, to Dan, as Dan will know from our Overview and Scrutiny Committee, is that I anticipate that I'll get the minutes way before the overview, because we've actually strengthened up since our last meeting of me reporting back to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on what has been discussed today. So thank you for the minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
You,
I want those notes of mine at the beginning, in them in a crisp fashion, because I think it. I mean, my reason for that is that we have had comments on various. We had it on EV charging, we had it on circular economy, and I actually some of the comments are fair, but this has to be cross-party, cross-council. Taking it together, and if there's issues about what we're doing, we need to take them up. So I thought I'd just re-guide what we're doing. Okay.
Forgive me, Chair. Sorry to elongate the meeting. It just suddenly hit me again. Actually, I do recall following my discussion about I think it was solar panels and tiles, and I can't recall whether we actually had a report back on the findings of the new ways of working with new tiles on the roofs, and I know that you asked for a report back, but I can't remember whether we did receive it.
Peter, I think you're being a little bit mischievous there, because you know very well we haven't.
To be honest with you, Chair, I couldn't remember. Honestly,
I think we have.
I wasn't being devilish. I
enjoy. No, we ought to. Can we pick that up, please? It's a relatively. I mean, it might be a research item, but I do think we need to. It's one of the first things comments Peter made a long time ago, or one of us made, and we both agreed with each other, we ought to pick that up, because solar is a very important aspect of it, and integrating solar panels in new roofing, I think, would be a very interesting way to look at it. Through tiles and things. They exist, and I think they're more expensive, but we'd like to know more. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. On that basis.